Hello everyone and welcome back to another CodeSTARS video. Today we're going to be discussing the Resident Evil Village DLC that was announced about 7 months ago. We haven't really heard anything about when it's going to release, what it is. I think the only thing that has been said as of this recording was at the beginning of the month. I believe Capcom mentioned that we can expect it in 2022, but that is literally it. I don't believe there is any other news about the DLC. So we thought, what better way to get hype for that than to go over some theories, some reasons as to why we think certain things could appear in a DLC, what the DLC could be exactly about, what we don't think it's going to be about at all, and we'll section them off into dedicated videos just so the video is not too long and it's a bit more structured that way. So this video in particular is going to focus on the possibility of an Ada DLC. For those who aren't familiar, within the concept art of Resident Evil Village there is a part that shows Ada in a Plague Doctor outfit with her crossbow, and the only caption we have for it is that it was basically a very early concept in Resident Evil Village. They were going to put Ada in the game to help Ethan, but they had to cut it due to conflicting scenarios, so they couldn't figure out a way to put her into the game. And the thing of Resident Evil Village is the main story sort of covers everything. There's not really much you can explore in a DLC. Like, you couldn't really have Chris go through his own scenario or whatever, because Ethan deals with everything. He fights all of the lords, he sort of does everything. There's not really any stone left unturned with Resident Evil Village.
Yeah, that would be the problem with the Ada DLC. Ethan does everything. Before starting this video, we had a chat about Ada, what she could be there for, to get a sample of the MEGAMYCETE. But what gameplay would there be? Now, it is likely that she could show up towards the end of the game when there's a lot going down and she could just slip by, get a sample of the MEGAMYCETE, but it doesn't seem like there'll be too much gameplay. And with them working on this for about 7 months now, that would feel kind of short.
Yeah, I mean, like David just said, it's been about 7 months. What could they be working on for 7 months? It's got to be a DLC that is on sort of the same scale as Not a Hero from Resident Evil 7 or End of Zoe from Resident Evil 7. You know, they are quite fleshed out DLCs. They're not like the banned footage volumes from that game. So it's got to be something similar to those two scenarios. And it just doesn't seem like Ada could be put into the game in a useful way or in a way that feels like it's natural. You know what I mean? It seems like their initial concept was to just get Ada in the game and they just couldn't think of a reason for her to be there, so they scrapped it. It feels like they're trying to shoehorn Ada into the game just because she's a classic Resident Evil character. And again, like David said, it could be a case of Ada going to collect a sample of the MEGAMYCETE, you know, and that's used in a future game. But you got to remember, what sort of gameplay elements would there be? Because the only way this could be a thing is if they set it at the end of the game when Chris is raiding the village basically around that time, and she somehow slips into the area where the MEGAMYCETE is before Chris does, grabs a sample and then gets out of there, because obviously at the end of the game the MEGAMYCETE is blown to smithereens, like it is gone. So there is very little room to work with here, but you know, it definitely is a possibility. It could still happen. There is a way they could do that, and if they were to do it in a way where it felt natural and it was done well and didn't feel like it was just put there just because it's Ada, a classic Resident Evil character, I'd be all for it.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible they could add something like outside the village, a part that Ethan didn't explore, and there's other enemies there, some enemy type that you didn't come across before, but I'm not too sure if there's going to be enough to justify a DLC. And Ada's an important character. Like, she's one of the biggest characters of Resident Evil, so just throwing a little DLC like that for her, that's kind of meaningless. I feel like it would do more harm than good.
Yeah, when you're comparing these to stuff like End of Zoe and Not a Hero from Resident Evil 7, they have their purpose. You know, in Not a Hero, Chris ends Lucas, who was essentially the reason Resident Evil 7 was a thing, you know what I mean, with the connections and all that. So that was a pretty significant DLC. And the End of Zoe concludes the Baker Mansion incident, and you know, she goes on to survive and plays quite a vital role in Resident Evil 8 if you read the Baker incident file. So those DLCs have their purpose, and I feel like it just wouldn't feel natural if what we were saying were the case for Ada, an Ada DLC. There's not really any other section in the game where you could place Ada, honestly. That's why we are specifically talking about the part where Chris raids the village, because that's the only part where it would seem like Ada could do something of use, where she grabs a MEGAMYCETE sample and that's it. Because honestly, I don't really see how else you could put her into the game. You know, Ethan doesn't see her throughout Resident Evil 8. There's no mention of her, obviously, because it was all concept art stuff. They've got to do it in a way where it feels natural. Now, they could have the DLC go in a similar way to Separate Ways from Resident Evil 4, where Ada's constantly just behind Leon and she sees him quite often, but he never sees her. It would explain why we as Ethan in the main game never see Ada. They could do a similar thing to that, but the problem is, you know, as I mentioned before, what sort of gameplay elements would there be? What sort of enemies would there be? You need boss fights and stuff like that, and Ethan literally deals with all of the lords, and it's not like how it is in Separate Ways, for example, when Ada fights Sadler and she fights his like in normal form, I guess, and then he mutates for the Leon boss fight in Resident Evil 4. It's not like anything like that could happen, because you literally see them mutate from their normal form into their mutated form as Ethan. Like, it doesn't really add up, so I don't really see what sort of bosses you could encounter. Maybe you won't need to encounter bosses, maybe it'll just be enemies. That could be the case.
The different enemy type that we encounter as Ada could be the BSA bioweapons that are sent in, and that explains why we never encountered them as Chris.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I think that could definitely be the case. But as I said, I feel like they'd have to make that go somewhere, because we've seen at the end of previous Resident Evil games where it's been like an epilogue cutscene, for example, that shows another virus is still out there when we thought it was gone, and it didn't end up going anywhere. I'm specifically talking about the epilogue of Resident Evil Revelations. That has never come up again, and I doubt it will in the future, but if they could make this go somewhere, I'd be all for it. The MEGAMYCETE is a very interesting virus, and I think it shouldn't end here. And if Ada grabs a sample of that, it won't just end here. It could make its way into other games in some way. So that about wraps up this short video. Just a quick theory on what one of the possibilities for the new Village DLC could be. We'll have more Village DLC videos coming very shortly, so stay tuned for that. Tell us what you think down below in the comments, whether you think this is a possibility, whether you think it was just concept and that they aren't going to revisit it in any way. Maybe you have your own idea or speculation as to how Ada could be put into Resident Evil Village in a way that makes sense. Whatever the case may be, leave that down below in the comments section. Don't forget to leave a like on this video and subscribe if you want more Resident Evil content. But as for now, we hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, cheers for watching.